Call 866-482-LIFE. Your call is confidential, and you'll be talking with someone who has already been where you are and found the way out. 866-482-LIFE.
When you hear who the source, one of the sources of that information is, you're going to think, oh my gosh, I've heard that name somewhere before. Where could it possibly have been? That'd be really warm.
You look right into the camera and say, I know for a fact the government of Vladimir Putin was behind the hacks of John Podesta's email.
Absolutely. The government of Vladimir Putin was behind the hacks.
You've never spoken to Donald Trump in your life?
Nope.
No email, no text, nothing like that?
Never.
You're carrying water for the Kremlin.
I'm not carrying water for the... You're a sitting member of Congress on the Intel Committee.
You're going to have to move your show to RT Russian television.
If you dare ask an uncomfortable question, they accuse you of working for a hostile foreign dictator.
Democrats are really looking at something that is very dangerous for our country.
MS-13 is the most violent gang in the country. The president is willing to have a showdown with the Democrats again because he knows how it's going to end.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged. An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Hi, and welcome to this brand new, fresh edition of Focal Point on American Family Radio. I am Brian Fisher, your congenial, convivial, and amiable host. Also, the first mate on board the USS Focal Point. Our commander is on the bridge. The scriptures serve as our nautical charts, and the Holy Spirit is our navigator. Glad to have you in the conversation today. We want to jump right into a study of the Word, which is our
You forgot
custom.
to mention me and Rob down in the engine room.
Yeah.
Shoveling coal.
Yeah. We got Rob and Jeff down in the engine room. They are shoveling coal like crazy. The reason I didn't mention them is that they were out of sight because they're down there working away. They got sweat pouring off their brows.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to embarrass them because people would think of them with all the sweat coming down their faces and soaking their shirts. And
wow.
I didn't want people to be carrying around that image of them during the rest of the program.
Please.
Yeah,
Those sweaty guys in the engine hole.
Yeah, just trying to be sensitive.
Thank you.
Well, let's turn to Job chapters 6 and 7. We're using a schedule you can find at pray.afa.net. Again, I encourage you to bookmark that page, pray.afa.net. Bookmark it, open it up every morning, read the passage of Scripture that's identified there, pray the prayer back to God, read the Word, pray the Word back to God. Now, I've written a prayer based on this passage, which is for somebody who's going through a really intense time of suffering. This might be you, or it might be somebody that you know and love and care for. So if you're that person that's going through that really, really intense period of suffering, then this prayer is written for you. I'm going to pray it, but I want you to identify with it. Put yourself in the person, the place of the person that's praying this prayer, and make this your prayer. If there's somebody you know that's going through a really intense time of suffering, then you identify with them and pray this for them by proxy. Ask God to look to them and apply the request of this prayer to the person that you're thinking of. Now, Job is writing at a time, remember, when he'd lost everything. His family had been taken from him. His wealth had been taken from him. His health had finally been taken from him. Virtually everything that matters to us had been taken from Job. And he's left with no explanation from God about why all of this was happening to him. His friends gather around him and say, look, it's because you have unconfessed sin. You have secret unconfessed sin. And Job says, no, I don't. And he says, yes, you do. You're just lying to yourself, and you're lying to us, and you're lying to God. You've got unconfessed sin. You got to fess up, buddy, because it's not going to get right for you until you do that. And Job insisted that he had no sin that he was aware of, that he hadn't confessed, but they just wouldn't let up. So Job's now kind of left to himself, but it's him and God, and he continues to pray to God. And he says, look, he's telling God, it seems like God has made me his enemy. He says this in verse 4, the arrows of the Almighty are in me. My spirit drinks their poison. The terrors of God are arrayed against me. Now, here are some of the things that happened in Job's life because of the intense suffering and grieving he was doing. He lost his appetite. He says in verse 7, my appetite refuses to touch them. They are as food that is loathsome to me. Couldn't even eat, couldn't even enjoy food. Then there are times it was so bad he just wished God would take him home. Verse 8, oh, that I might have my request, and that God would fulfill my hope, that it would please God to crush me, that he would loose his hand and cut me off. This, he says, would be my comfort. And yet he's puzzled because he says, look, I have not denied God's word. He says this in verse 10, I have not denied the words of the Holy One. That's why this was so painful to him. Job, as far as he could tell, had been faithful to God in every way that he knew, and yet despite that, he was experiencing this suffering, which means it can happen to us. Not inconsistent with the will of God. He may choose to allow that to happen in our lives, just as he did in the life of Job. And Job gets to the point where he says, look, I don't know, God, how much more of this I can take. He says in verse 11, what is my strength that I should wait? What is my end that I should be patient? Is my strength the strength of stones, or is my flesh bronze? Have I any help in me when resource is driven from me? So he's empty of resources, isn't getting any help that he can see from God, and he's just about at the end of his rope. And then he complains about his friends. He says, look, even my friends have let me down. The people that he had counted on the most had disappointed him. They had not been there for him. Their words of counsel had made things worse and not better for him. So he complains about them, starting in verse 14. He who withholds kindness from a friend, talking about his buddies, he says, forsakes the fear of the Almighty. My brothers are treacherous as a torrent bed, as torrential streams that pass by. There would be these wadis, these riverbeds, and they would fill up with water in the spring. They would drain off, and then they would be as dry as a bone. And he points out to his friend that they cannot identify the sin that they claim he has committed. He says, verse 24, teach me, and I will be silent. Make me understand how I have gone astray. How forceful are upright words, but what does reproof from you reprove? It's meaningless because you don't know what you are talking about. And then he complains at one point in chapter 7 that it just seems like the days stretch on forever. He's in the middle of this period of suffering, and it may seem like that to you. It seems like that to me at times, that there's no relief on the horizon, nothing to look forward to, because as far as you can see, you see pain and suffering that's ahead. You can't even sleep. He says this in chapter 7, has not man a hard service on the earth? Are not his days like the days of a hired hand? So I am allotted months of emptiness, and nights of misery are apportioned to me. When I lie down, I say, when shall I rise? But the night is long, and I am full of tossing till dawn. He says, I feel hopeless, my life is hard, and then I am going to die. And he tells God, look, I don't see any reason not to let it all hang out and tell you exactly how I feel. I'm going to let you know how bitter and angry I am, because I can't see any reason at this point in my life not to do that very thing. Well, I'm going to go to prayer with this prayer that I've written. It may apply to you. It may apply to somebody that you care for. If it does, you care about, then let's pray this prayer back to God. Lord God, I wish that my vexation and calamity could be weighed and laid in the balances. They would be heavier than the sand of the sea. For your arrows, the arrows of the Almighty, are in me, and my spirit drinks their poison. Your terrors are arrayed against me. When I say my bed will comfort me, you scare me with dreams and terrify me with visions. There are times when I would choose death over this life. Lord, there are times when I wish you would leave me alone, because it seems as though you have made me your mark, and that you visit me every morning only to test me every moment. If there is some secret transgression in me, I beg you to pardon it and take it away. but I will continue to seek your face in prayer, and I will not deny your words, the words of the Holy One. I plead with you to come to me, to pardon my transgression, and take away my iniquity. It is in you I fix my hope. Amen.
Dan Celia of Financial Issues.
You know, there's probably never been a more important time in our economy to be thinking about a charitable gift annuity. I hope you'll do that just to shore up, to firm up some more income, permanent income that you can count on for the rest of your life while you're doing the Lord's work. A charitable gift annuity has been something I've been talking about for 25 years. Finally, we're seeing even mainstream start to get on board with the merits of charitable gift annuities. I hope you'll consider it. You can call the AFA Foundation. Someone there will help you work through the details and find out whether you qualify for a charitable gift annuity.
Call and speak with a representative of the AFA Foundation at 800-326-4543, extension 345.
A man without self-control is like a city broken into and left without walls. My name is Abraham Hamilton III, and this is the Hamilton Corner. California Assembly Bill 60 allows any California resident to get a driver's license regardless of immigration status. California Assembly Bill 1461 says residents who go to the DMV to renew a driver's license or state ID will have their information automatically sent to the Secretary of State's office to be added to the voter rolls. Neither law requires automatic illegal alien voter registration, but it sure presents a streamlined opportunity for it to happen. All this from a state that proudly declares itself a sanctuary state.
Visit the Hamilton Corner on the podcast page at afr.net for more from Abraham Hamilton III, public policy analyst for the American Family Association.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point, American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Great to have you in our conversation today. The program is Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on Conservative Talk Radio. And you're listening to the American Family Radio Network, the most dangerous radio network in all of America. Glad to have you on board the USS Focal Point. Piece of good news to start off with. The U.S. banned oil exports as late as 2015. Silly in my mind. That ban was done away with in 2015, and since then, even the UAE in December bought oil directly from us. So the Gulf cartels now are buying oil from us. Our exports have increased from 100,000 barrels a day in 2013 to 1.53 million barrels in November, going as far as China and the UK. By the way, the judge that's going to hear the case on Donald Trump's wall is the same judge whom Trump questioned. He was a Mexican judge, and Trump questioned whether he could be fair and impartial in dealing with immigration. So we'll find out how all that goes. His name is District Court Judge Gonzalo Curiel. He's scheduled to hear this case. It's on the Department of Homeland Security's power to waive environmental laws to make it easier and quicker to build a border wall. It'll be heard Friday in his San Diego courtroom. Now, let's jump right into the latest breaking news on the memo. And I want to start with that Obama clip. We'll start with this, and then we'll see if we have reason to question what President Obama said here in clip R1. He's talking here to Chris Wallace, and we'll start with the question that Chris Wallace asked him, then listen carefully to Barack Obama's answer, and we'll see how his answer stacks up to his behavior. Let's listen.
Can you guarantee to the American people, can you direct the Justice Department to say Hillary Clinton will be treated as the evidence goes, she will not be in any way protected?
I can guarantee that. And I can guarantee that not because I give Attorney General Lynch a directive. That is institutionally how we have always operated. I do not talk to the Attorney General about pending investigations. I do not talk to FBI directors about pending investigations. We have a strict line and always have maintained it, previous presidents.
Just to button this up.
I guarantee it. I guarantee that there is no political influence in any investigation conducted by the Justice Department or the FBI, not just in this case, but in any case.
And she will be
full stop, period.
And she will be treated no differently?
Guaranteed, full stop. Nobody gets treated differently when it comes to the Justice Department because nobody is above the law.
Even if she ends up as the Democratic nominee?
How many times do I have to say it, Chris? Guaranteed.
Guaranteed. Not going to have any political influence in any investigation conducted by the Justice Department or the FBI, not just in this case, but in any case, full stop, period. That is an assurance from the President of the United States. Now comes this breaking news today. You might have already heard about this. This is from Hot Air. Fox News reported last night, Jake Gibson is the source of this, the reporter, reported last night that newly released texts between FBI agents Peter Strozk and Lisa Page indicated that then President Barack Obama wanted to be informed about all of the activity in their investigation. Newly revealed text messages include an exchange. This is between Peter Strozk and Lisa Page. These are the two having an adulterous relationship with each other. They included this exchange. They were preparing talking points for FBI Director James Comey. He was the director at the time. And it was to give to President Obama. And President Obama sent them a text to say, quote, I want to know everything you're doing. Or at least that's how they paraphrase what he had to say. He wants to know everything that we are doing. POTUS wants to know everything we are doing. So much for Barack Obama not talking to anybody in the FBI about pending investigations. Well, see, he left himself a little wiggle room. He said, I don't talk to FBI directors. I could sure meddle with your agents all I want, because I didn't make any promise to Chris Wallace that I wasn't going to talk to the man-on-the-street agents. I just won't talk to any FBI directors, because I got a strict line. I got an absolute red line about all that kind of stuff. You know, one of the questions that came up to me, and maybe it came up to you, is, you know, there are so many questions. You read through the memo. We talked about some of this. You read through the memo, even at first blush, there's a lot of questions you have about what is in there. You know, and all the stuff that has come out about Lisa Page and Peter Strozk having to be relieved of duty because they obviously were biased against Donald Trump. They were so badly biased that even Bob Mueller had to excuse them from duty. You see this obvious bias even seeping through the information that's given to us in the House memo referring to what was in the FISA request. Now, here's what Louis Gohmert, this is clip R2. Louis Gohmert, who used to be a district judge himself, he says one of two things is true with respect to this FISA request, this request for a FISA warrant before this judge. Here's what he had to say.
One of two things. Either the judge was duped with false information, with the lies into signing a warrant, or the judge is just so worthless it was part of all this and didn't care if he didn't have the facts.
Okay. Is that it on that one? Okay, got a second part of that clip where he went on to say, either way, the judge should be livid in the fact that these guys didn't go to jail for contempt. And there are a couple of kinds of contempt. You can have a contempt where a judge has to have a hearing sort out the facts, but if a fraud is presented to the court and the court is manipulated, you don't have to have a hearing. You can just order them in contempt for 6 months in jail, and those people should be in jail for what they did. And Louis Gohmert says, man, there was nothing like putting a lawyer in jail for contempt that'll not only get his mind right, but it'll get every other judge or every other lawyer involved in that case, it'll get their minds right at the same time. Now, Carter Page was one of the initial suspects that was fingered. He had to plead guilty to lying to the FBI. And originally, everybody was just all wrapped up in Carter Page. Carter Page is the bad guy. Carter Page is the Russian agent. Carter Page is the guy that's got to go to prison. And then they dropped him like a hot rock and went to this Papadopoulos guy. But here's Carter Page being talked to by George Stephanopoulos and asking him about his interaction with Trump. Here's what he had to say.
You've been under surveillance from the court since October 2016. Since that time, have you ever spoken to Donald Trump?
I never spoke with him since. I never spoke with him any time in my life.
You've never spoken to Donald Trump in your life?
Nope.
No email, no text, nothing like that?
Never.
So Carter Page, remember, this is the guy the Democrats were convinced was the guilty party at the beginning. They were all over Carter Page. They were hounding Carter Page. They said, he's the guy, he's the guilty guy. Well, it turns out he never had any exchange of information with Donald Trump whatsoever, has never spoken with him in his life, never received or sent an email to him, never sent a text or received a text from him, nothing like that, never in his life. Now, the question still out there, the 4-page memo made reference to information from a foreign source that was coming to somebody from somewhere. Trey Gowdy's asked this question in clip number 2, and here's what he had to say.
So weeks before the election, somebody in the Obama State Department was feeding information from a foreign source to Christopher Steele.
When you hear who the source, one of the sources of that information is, you're going to think, oh my gosh, I've heard that name somewhere before. Where could it possibly have been? And
the foreign source?
The domestic source. And I'm trying to think how Secretary Clinton defined him. I think she said he was an old friend who emailed her from time to time.
Sidney Blumenthal?
That'd be really warm. You're warm. Yeah.
And you say, well, who is Sidney Blumenthal? Well, like he said, that's a blast from the past. Sidney Blumenthal was an aide to President Bill Clinton from 1997 to 2001, assistant senior advisor to President Clinton for those 4 years. Then he was a prime witness in the grand jury testimonies over Monica Lewinsky. He was famous for leaking creepy stories about the Ken Starr special prosecutor investigation to the press. He became known as a man that would do absolutely anything for the Clintons. He got a reputation that was so slimy that not even Rahm Emanuel would let him anywhere near the Obama White House. Hillary, however, loved the guy. He was on a $10,000 a month retainer at the Clinton Foundation, and he was hip deep in creating the Benghazi scandal from his Libyan sources. So these days, he's affiliated with David Brock's Media Matters. This is a left-wing slime machine. So he apparently was involved in egging on the Russians to produce the contents that he wanted for this dossier, and apparently fed information that he got from the Russians to the State Department, and then the State Department passed it on to Christopher Steele. Now, he had some sources, apparently, said Blumenthal did, inside the Kremlin, the gangster types in the Kremlin. That's Sid Blumenthal. This guy has been encased in slime since the day he appeared on the public stage. Now, going back to the text between Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, here's some of the stuff they said in their text exchanges. They said that Paul Ryan, quote, is a jerk, that Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell looks like a turtle. A little bit hard to argue with that. Oversight Committee Chairman Trey Gowdy is a boop, can't say the word, on family radio, and that newscaster Chris Wallace is a boop, can't say that word, on family radio, but it's a word you might use for something a dog would drop in your front yard. They claim James Comey is just too much of a Boy Scout. So they and it wrote that Congress was contemptible. Hard to find anybody other than each other that they even liked back in 2.
This is Dr. Richard Lamb, president of Southern Evangelical Seminary. Welcome to Bringing Every Thought Captive. The last 2 days, I've talked with you about the House Intelligence Committee memorandum. No wonder the FBI officials were trying to keep the House Intelligence Committee memorandum from being released. They got caught with their hands in the cookie jar, and they wanted to suppress the evidence. Thankfully, the House Intelligence Committee and the president didn't succumb to their entreaties. Former FBI Director James Comey had tweeted the night before the memorandum was released, and I quote, "Take heart. American history shows that in the long run, weasels and liars never hold the field so long as good people stand up. Not a lot of schools or streets named for Joe McCarthy," end quote. Well, Mr. Comey, not a lot of schools or streets are going to be named after you either. In fact, I suggest that the only things that are going to be named after you will be court cases and perhaps chapters in legal textbooks that are titled with things like James Comey, an example of what not to do. Your hypocritical and pious act of posing as the last honest man in Washington has now been totally exposed. If I were you, Mr. Comey, I would be spending my time trying to retain the best criminal lawyer I could find rather than casting aspersions on others. We, the American people, must insist that the chips fall where they may. We need an independent counsel to investigate this whole mess, to root out the corruption at the top levels of the Justice Department and the FBI, and restore the rule of law and the belief that no man or woman is above the law to the practice of American law in the federal government. This is Richard Land.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio. Listen to the audio podcast or download today's program at afr.net. You can also read Brian Fisher's columns at afa.net. afa.net.
Hi, and welcome back to this edition of Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Listening to high definition radio on Focal Point. On your radio dial, more content per cubic inch of air than any other place on your radio dial, your imaginary radio dial. Now, here's some more information about these texts that surfaced. 500 more pages of text surfacing from Lisa Page and Peter Strozk today. And it turns out that high-level officials in the DOJ were aware that there were hundreds of thousands of additional emails related to the Hillary Clinton email investigation a full month before James Comey told Congress that they even existed. So Congress for an entire month was completely in the dark about the existence of these additional emails. Here's what Peter Strozk wrote to Lisa Page. Got called up to Andy's earlier. That would be Andrew McCabe, Deputy Director of the FBI, who resigned in disgrace last week from the FBI. Hundreds of thousands of emails turned over by Weiner's attorney to Southern District of New York attorney includes a ton of material from the spouse, that is Huma Abedin. So they know that these emails came off of Anthony Weiner's laptop. They know that they were pertinent to the Hillary Clinton investigation, that there were hundreds of thousands of them, and yet Congress was not even aware of their existence for an entire month. And it was these additional emails, by the way, and 5 of these emails were marked classified. These were ones that were sent by Huma Abedin to Anthony Weiner. Apparently, she was using his personal laptop as like a backup storage for these emails, the classified information, which complete violation of the law. I mean, it's a felony offense to do what she did with this information. And these are the texts that jump-started the second Hillary Clinton investigation. Remember when James Comey got drilled for his October 28, right before the election? He sent a letter to Congress announcing the discovery of these emails and reopening the infamous email investigation. Well, the reason it came out so late is the FBI kept him completely in the dark, or he kept them in the dark. He decided to sit on that information, wasn't going to let them know, and then finally got to thinking, man, if it comes out that I sat on this information and it comes out after the election, I could be toast. So I better go ahead and let people know that I'm aware of this, or I'm going to be, my goose is the thing is going to be cooked. And so Comey came out with letting everybody know the investigation has to resume because we have all these extra emails that we have discovered. Well, those are the emails that they were talking about in those text exchanges. Also in these exchanges, these texts between Peter Strozk and Lisa Page, they explicitly mention using untraceable phones to talk to each other about Hillary. Quote, we text on that phone, talking about an iPhone, an untraceable iPhone. We text on that phone when we talk about Hillary so it cannot be traced. That's Strozk texting that message to Lisa Page. And also in that exchange is where Lisa Page reveals to Peter Strozk that POTUS wants to know everything that we are doing, contrary to his unequivocal promise to Chris Wallace, never talk to the FBI about a pending investigation. I've drawn a line in the sand about that, and I got to tell you, Chris, that line is just as firm, just as fixed as the line that I drew in the sand with regard to Syria. And you saw how serious I was about that red line, and I'm just as serious about this red line. Ain't going to happen. I can guarantee it. End of story. Full stop, period. Now, and specifically the reason that these two went out and got these Apple iPhones was to bypass, quote, government collection systems. So the government would have no way of what they were saying about Hillary Clinton, even though they were FBI agents and they were doing it on company time as a part of their job. And Peter Strozk told Page, look, if I wanted to copy or take classified information, I sure wouldn't do it on this phone, talking about their regular phones. Had to do it on an untraceable phone. Now, there is a Chuck Grassley document. He's over in the Senate side, but he there's a declassified document that surfaced from him from the Senate Judiciary Committee, and it confirms a lot of what was in the Nunes memo that we talked about earlier this week. It confirms that the FBI, quote, relied heavily, end quote, on an unverified dossier in order to obtain FISA surveillance warrants on Trump advisor Carter Page. So it confirms that this completely unverified dossier, nothing in it was verified, nothing at all. Even James Comey, June of 2017, said this thing is salacious and it's unverified. And he's talking about something that was used in October of 2016 to get a warrant from a federal judge. And did I play that Louis Gohmert clip of what the, yeah. You know, and Louis Gohmert said, look, man, this judge ought to throw these attorneys in jail for contempt. They lied to my face in court. And when that happened in my court, I tossed them in the clink under contempt. Unredacted portions of the document reveal the FBI's extensive involvement with the creator of the dossier, Christopher Steele. By the way, they cut him off at the knees. They fired him before they applied for the FISA warrant, but they did not tell the court that they dumped him, and they dumped him because he was having conversations. He was leaking information to the media. So breaking protocol, breaking their rules, and they just had it with him, so they fired him. But the The FISA court never found out about that. And he was caught lying to the FBI about that. And they did not tell the FISA court anything about that either. They were still vouching for his reputation before the FISA court in order not to interfere with their desire to get that warrant. The FBI notified the FISA court of the dossier's political origins, quote, to a vaguely limited extent. Remember, we talked about that at length yesterday, that the phrase that they used was from a political entity. Now, that's as vague and unspecified and murky as you can possibly get. So they were clearly making an effort to conceal from the FISA court that their source of information, or that the source of the money for the dossier, was Hillary Clinton and the Democratic National Committee, and Sidney Blumenthal, who's a longtime sycophant for the Clinton family. They just didn't want the FISA court to know anything about that, so they conceal it. And Chuck Grassley's memo says they mentioned it, but only to a vaguely limited extent, calling it a political entity when you're talking about the DNC and the Clinton campaign. That's about as vague as you can possibly get. The FBI, according to this memo from Grassley, withheld the notes from their meetings with Steele. So their notes never got to Congress, never got to the FISA court. And so much of the information in the Grassley memo matches the contents of the Nunes memo and confirms it. And this is a guy, you know, this guy, we're talking about the source of this. Who am I talking about? The Christopher Steele. This guy got $168,000 from Hillary and the Democratic Party to put this thing together. You know, and the FBI took a lot of important investigative steps based on the information they got from Steele. They relied very heavily on his credibility. You know, and it turns out that a lot of the information in the Steele dossier was disclosed to close to Christopher Steele by this Sidney Blumenthal, who was getting it from some of his shadier contacts in the Kremlin. You might have heard about this. Representative Schiff, he was pranked by a couple of Russian comedians. They offered to give him on the phone nude photos of Donald Trump and a Russian celebrity. And Adam Schiff says, man, we got to get our hands on that. We need to get that into the hands of the FBI. You know, it's hard to tell exactly whether Adam Schiff was suspicious or not, but she was sure anxious to see what they had and wanted to make sure that the FBI got their hands on all of that. Now, clip number 2, this is Trey Gowdy. We've heard a little bit of this from another tape. I'm sorry?
We ran the Gowdy already.
Well, we ran the first Gowdy, which was clip number... Oh, we already read that one? Mm-hmm. We already ran clip number 2? Mm-hmm. All right, okay, that one's done. My bad. Let's play clip number 3. This is Michael McCall, who's the head of the Foreign Intelligence Committee for the House, saying what the Inspector General ought to do now.
I do believe the Inspector General is looking into a couple of these FBI agents' political motivation with respect to some of these politically charged investigation. When I was at the Justice Department in Public Integrity section, we prided ourselves on not being partisan. Nobody knew what your political affiliation was, and that was for a reason, because we were not supposed to bring our politics into that office because it undermines the integrity of the institution and the credibility. And that should not have happened in this case. The IG is looking at this particular investigation, but I would respectfully request and recommend that the IG also expand his investigation into this FISA warrant application to determine whether it was valid or not. And if it's not, then it should not go forward.
Okay, the Inspector General, this guy's an independent guy. He's got a staff of 500 people, if you can believe it, to investigate skullduggery at the Justice Department. And somehow or other, and again, I have questions about this, he missed all of the questions about the FISA warrant, the application. Apparently, he was completely unaware of any of that. I don't know how he could be doing his job and not catch a whiff of that, but apparently that happened. And Michael McCall says, look, we prided ourselves on being nonpartisan, so it can be done. We'll be right back with your calls. Stay with us.
Unwholesome television programs and unnatural social agendas. As believers, we use our religious freedoms to take out the trash in the media and society. Even children's magazines are in the crosshairs. Join 1millionmoms.com and take action.
This is Monica Cole of 1 Million Moms. We need you to sign up and speak up for our children at 1millionmoms.com. We are making the difference.
Exposing Washington with Walker Wildman.
So who is responsible for the dysfunction in Washington? That's what we're going to be discussing today.
We have become one of the most litigious societies on the planet.
The goal of this show is to bring clarity to the news coming out of Washington, D.C., and to expose the deception that has plagued our nation's capital for decades.
Exposing Washington.
Each Saturday at 2:30 p.m. Central.
On American Family Radio.
Most likely you enjoy making your own choices. We all like to be in control of things. So when did that start for you? When was the first time you thought, I'm making my own decision here? Hi, I'm Mark Gregston with Parenting Today's Teens. I bet there's never been a time in your life when you didn't want to be in control. In fact, you probably fought for independence in your grade school and high school years. So why are we shocked when our own teens want to step out on their own? High-control parents have a way of stifling creativity and knocking the ambition right out of their kids. So how about it? Let the rope out a little. Today, give your teen a little space to make their own choices.
Want to learn more about grandparenting today's teens? Check out Mark Gregston's brand new book called Leaving a Legacy of Hope at parentingtodaysteens.org.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher.
Brian Fisher.
Welcome back to Focal Point, American Family Radio. Number to call, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Talk about some of the information that's come out just this day on the Lisa Page, Peter Strozk text messages, how they went and bought untraceable phones so their conversations could not be captured on the government collection system. So they were going outside channels, outside protocol, violating FBI protocol to talk to each other about Hillary Clinton. And also trying to evade any kind of detection of their communications by their superiors. We find out also that President Obama wanted to know everything that they were doing, everything that they were up to, was intensely interested in the investigation into Donald Trump. So despite the fact that he swore up and down to Chris Wallace, I never talked to the FBI about anything. That's their business. We've got a bright red line there. Never cross that line. That's off limits for me. That's off limits for us. We respect their independence. I'm not going to interfere. I'm not even going to talk to them about what they're doing. And now here is the president telling Peter Strozk, I want to know everything that you guys are up to. So we want to talk about some of these things. The number to call is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Let's grab, while you're calling in, grab clip number 4. The number again, 888-589-8840. Tucker Carlson talking to Adam Schiff here. This is an interesting exchange. Tucker Carlson, Adam Schiff. Let's listen.
Can you look right into the camera and say, I know for a fact the government of Vladimir Putin was behind the hacks of John Podesta's email?
Absolutely. The government of Vladimir Putin was behind the hacks of our institution and the dumping of information.
Of John Podesta's email.
Not only in the United States, but also in Europe,
Okay, you're not. You know what? You're dodging.
And Tucker,
no, look and say, I know they did. John Podesta's emails, they hacked
and
those.
I think that Ronald Reagan will be rolling over
Ronald
his
Reagan,
grave
fine. Ronald Reagan,
at your carrying water for the Kremlin.
I'm not carrying water for the. You're a sitting member of Congress on the Intel Committee, and you can't say they hacked.
You're gonna have to move your show to RT Russian television.
All right, Adam Schiff would not answer the question. Remember, the whole meme for the Democratic Party, I mean, this is central to their whole accusation about Donald Trump and their substantiation for Russian involvement is that the Russians hacked into John Podesta's emails. And that's how they got all that information. They were hacking into his emails. So we know that they were trying to do harm to the Hillary Clinton campaign. Now, it turns out that who am I talking? John Podesta, losing track of my people there, that John Podesta fell for what's called a phishing scheme, got one of these scam emails, fell for it, responded to it. They got his information, got password to his email account. And that's how those emails dribbled out. It wasn't a hacking job whatsoever. But Adam Schiff, remember, this is central to their whole deal, that John Podesta was hacked by the Russians. And Adam Schiff won't confirm that. He won't even answer that question. He just dodges it because he knows that if he were to give the true answer, he would be lying, and it would blow their whole story completely out of the water. Now, clip number 5, this is Tucker Carlson again, talking here about Adam Schiff and the representative from California, Representative Swalwell. Let's listen.
But at what cost, all of this? Schiff and Swalwell are not college professors. They're not CNN anchors. They're members of one of the most powerful and important committees in the Congress, one charged with overseeing our vast intelligence apparatus. They're supposed to be sober and thoughtful and smart, but they're not. Instead, if you dare ask an uncomfortable question, they accuse you of working for a hostile foreign dictator. Strictly speaking, that's a death penalty offense, by the way. This is your opposition party. These are the people who are supposed to be giving us an alternative to Trump, who they claim is too irresponsible to rule. But they're more irresponsible, and they're angrier, and they're more reckless. And most terrifying at all, they are poised to take power. 9 months from right now, at the midterms, they may. Chances are, in fact, they'll be running Congress again. These people, the ones who cavalierly accuse fellow Americans of treason, who mock civil liberties, who believe the U.S. Constitution itself is some kind of Russian ploy. They'll be in charge. Adam Schiff will be chairman of the Intel Committee. If there was ever incentive for the Republicans to get their act together, seriously, and do it fast, you just saw it.
So the GOP, he says, better get their act together, because if they lose control of the House, it is going to be lights out for conservatism in America, because these people that are perfectly willing to lie and to conceal and to jury rig and all that kind of stuff, they're going to be in charge of the whole kit and caboodle. All right, let's go to the phones. 888-589-8840 is the number to call. 888-589-8840. Let's go to Rick in Mobile, Alabama. What's on your mind, Rick?
Hey, I'm just going to agree with Tucker. What you and Tucker do is absolutely wonderful, getting the word out. But I'm afraid that we're just talking to the people that already agreed with us. And what I see happening from this memo that come out from the Republicans and the one that's going to come out from the Democrats, one side's going to say the other side's lying, and then they're going to say they're lying, and nothing is going to happen. Nothing at all.
Yeah.
That's what
Well, unfortunately, Rick, you probably are right. I don't know where exactly this thing is going to go from here. We have to give some thought to that. Maybe we can make some educated guesses about what the next step is going to be. But obviously, there's going to be a need for somebody, and the Inspector General may be the key to all of this. The Inspector General is coming out with a report that's going to talk about the FBI's investigation into Hillary's emails. Now, remember, this Inspector General is supposed to be completely independent. He's not a partisan guy, not a member of either political party. His job is just to be an inspector. He's a watchdog for whatever agency he's assigned to. So this guy is supposed to, and the reputation he has as being pretty much of a straight shooter. So he may be blowing the whistle on what happened or did not happen and should have in the whole investigation into Hillary's emails. And we heard Michael McCall saying, look, he needs to look into this whole FISA business. So maybe we can hope that the Inspector General will do that, because he could get to the bottom of it. and he can't be accused of having a political bias, and he might be able to shed some light that we need to get. All right, let's go to Ann in Rockport, Texas. Ann, welcome. What's on your mind?
Well, my mind is spinning with all this news, as I'm sure most people are too. I happen to be a woman from Minnesota. I wear a Trump hat, which I sell and I have. I'm such a proud supporter of the plan, not the man, because I think he angers all of us. But at the bottom line, I'm hoping when this goes down, and if it comes down to Obama, that he has to stand in front of a grand jury, and that between him and Clinton, that they both really serve some prison time. I really, truly hope. I think this would certainly change the world as we know it, to see those who are guilty get just desserts.
Yeah.
That's my comment.
All right. Well, thank you, Ann. You know, we talked about this when I talked through my column on impeachment. You know, if somebody's in office, if a president is in office, I'm convinced that the founding fathers wanted to insulate a sitting president from having to go to court, from being prosecuted. He's got a country to run. He cannot be distracted by having to show up in court, prepare a defense, and all that kind of stuff. So that was the reason they provided impeachment. So there's a way for him to be held accountable, but not thrown into jail. But they did say, look, after the impeachment process is over, if he is tried and he is convicted, then he can be held accountable in a court of law, because impeachment is for political crimes, not for criminal crimes. But if he's committed criminal crimes, then he can be prosecuted in a court of law. Well, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, they're both out of office now, so they could well stand to be prosecuted. I mean, they're eligible to be prosecuted. All right, Ann, thank you. Let's go to Barry, Richmond, Virginia. Barry, what's on your mind? Talk to me.
Yeah, I'm driving in my car, so I hope I don't lose you. But I'm sorry, I have to say this is the most biased discussion I've ever heard in my life about this issue. You are distorting what President Obama told Chris Wallace. He said that he would not interfere in Hillary Clinton's investigation, and as far as anybody knows, he did not interfere in that investigation. When it comes to some investigation of Russians trying to interfere in our election, he would have been derelict not to want to know what's going on with the FBI. He would have been accused of violating his oath if he said, don't tell me anything about the Russians interfering with our election. You have not mentioned that distinction. You equate the two, and I think that is so unfair.
Well, Barry, I agree with you that he could legitimately do that, because the FBI is not, I mean, this is one of the things a lot of Democrats have made a mistake about. They've said, look, Trump can't talk to the FBI. He can't fire the FBI director. He can't meddle because they're independent. But the reality is they're part of the Justice Department, as you point out, and the head of the executive branch, they're part of the executive branch, and the head of the executive branch is the president. So Donald Trump can fire anybody he wants in the executive branch, including Bob Mueller, including the FBI director, because they report to him. He's the boss. He's the head of the, and Barack Obama could do exactly the same thing. Barack Obama could ask the FBI to show him anything they've got about anything. My problem, Barry, is that he said he wouldn't do it, and he went out of his way to make a pledge about that. I'm just going to read you his own words. I do not talk to the Attorney General about pending investigations. I do not talk to FBI directors about pending investigations. We have a strict line, always have maintained it. I guarantee it. I guarantee that there is no political influence in any investigation conducted by the Justice Department, not just in this case, but in any case. So I don't talk to the FBI about any pending investigations, not just this one, not the Hillary one, but about any pending investigations. So I will stand on Barack Obama's own words, Barry. Listen, I appreciate your call. Thanks for calling in. Jared and Mac, if you guys can hold on, I will take you first thing coming right out of the news break. If you can hang on, be glad to take your call. Want to know what's on your mind? Just hang on for 5 minutes and we'll get right to you. You're listening to Focal Point, American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
News travels fast and it's constantly changing. Keep up on onenewsnow.com. It's a news site featuring the latest breaking stories from across the U.S. and around the world. OneNewsNow.com has well-researched articles from a conservative evangelical perspective. Get the full story when you visit OneNewsNow.com.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio, a ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Steve Pugh. As lawmakers work on a term budget agreement, a Democrat who voted no on the tax bill is calling for bipartisanship.
Who's voted more times in a centrist way than me? Nobody. I'm 54 or 58% of the time voting with my colleagues at the Republican side. If I think something makes sense, I vote for it. No one controls my vote. No one tells me how to vote. If I can go home and explain it and it makes sense, I vote for it.
That was West Virginia Senator Joe Manchin appearing on Fox News. The senator has come under fire from Vice President Pence, who seemed to believe Manchin had said he would support the president's tax bill. And as lawmakers work toward that budget agreement, some are warning against military cuts.
Just last year, 2017, we lost 21 service members who were killed in hostile action. But we lost 80, 4 times as many, who were killed in training accidents. That's part of the human cost.
Congressman Mac Thornberry of Texas, chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, speaking to Fox and Friends. The Trump administration will soon announce new efforts to deter North Korea's nuclear ambitions. More from Rachel Sutherland.
Vice President Mike Pence says the U.S. is preparing to unveil what he described as the toughest and most aggressive sanctions against North Korea.
We will continue to isolate North Korea until it abandons its nuclear and ballistic missile program once and for all.
Pence made the comments in Japan as he gets ready to lead the U.S. delegation to the Winter Olympics opening ceremony in South Korea. The vice president has said he's open to talking with North Korean officials, but stressed no meeting has been scheduled. In Washington, Rachel Sutherland, Fox News.
An immigration enforcement organization is trying to get the word out to Republican members of Congress that the GOP base strongly opposes any kind of amnesty for illegal aliens. Chad Groening has more.
Americans for Legal Immigration PAC, or ALLY PAC, has released a poll it commissioned of likely Republican primary voters. It showed that respondents opposed Congress and President Trump approving any legislation that would accommodate millions of DACA and Dreamer illegal aliens with amnesty by a 2-1 margin. William Geen is president of ALLY PAC.
Certified scientific poll commissioned by ALLY PAC through the Barometer Polling Company shows that 67% of likely GOP primary voters oppose DACA amnesties and prefer that our existing laws be enforced instead. And that's over 2/3. And the numbers go even higher when you look at Republican-held districts or Trump-carried states.
And Geen says he disagrees with those who say Trump's amnesty plan is a clever move, knowing the Democrats will never accept it.
I personally do not subscribe to the theory that it was all some type of elaborate chess move to mess with the Democrats. I will say that if it was some type of strategy to try to mess with the Democrats, that upsetting his base was not a smart move to do.
Geen says he has dispatched volunteers to Washington to get his poll into the hands of GOP lawmakers. I'm Chad Groening.
Athletes heading to the Winter Olympics in South Korea have a new concern: norovirus. Tanya J. Powers has more.
About 1,200 people have been confined to their rooms, and signs at Olympic venues urge extreme caution as South Korean officials scramble to get a handle on the spread of norovirus at the Pyeongchang Games. Olympics organizers say the norovirus began Sunday when private security workers started complaining of headaches, stomach pain, and diarrhea. Because the sick workers handled security, 900 military personnel have been brought in to work at 20 venues until the sequestered people can go back to work. Officials are tracking the spread of the disease, and health inspections are being done at restaurants and all food facilities linked to the Olympics. The opening ceremony is on Friday. Tanya J. Powers, Fox News.
And an Arkansas resident asked a judge today to strike down a new state law requiring voters show photo ID before casting a ballot. The lawsuit filed in Pulaski County Circuit Court is challenging the measure's constitutionality ahead of its first enforcement statewide in Arkansas's May 22nd primary. Early voting for the primary is set to begin May 7th. American Family News is online at onenewsnow.com and download the One News Now mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
It says, and do the first works. What is that? Go back and begin by faith to obediently do what you did when you were first saved that you're not doing anymore.
Join Dr. David Jeremiah for his series Escape the Coming Night, next time on Turning Point.
5:30 a.m. and 7 p.m. Central on American Family Radio.
When you hear who the source or one of the sources of that information is, you're going to think, oh my gosh, I've heard that name somewhere before. Where could it possibly have been?
Maybe Blumenthal?
That'd be really warm.
You look right into the camera and say, I know for a fact the government of Vladimir Putin was behind the hacks of John Podesta's email.
Absolutely. The government of Vladimir Putin was behind the hacks.
You've never spoken to Donald Trump in your life? Nope. No email, no text, nothing like that? Never.
You're carrying water for the Kremlin.
I'm not carrying water for the... You're a sitting member of Congress on the Intel Committee.
You're going to have to move your show to RT Russian television.
If you dare ask an uncomfortable question, they accuse you of working for a hostile foreign dictator.
Democrats are really looking at something that is very dangerous for our country.
MS-13 is the most violent gang in the country. The president is willing to have a showdown with the Democrats again because he knows how it's going to end.
Freedom prospers when religion is vibrant and the rule of law under God is acknowledged. An informed patriot is what we want.
Welcome to American Family Radio's Focal Point, the home of muscular Christianity on conservative talk radio.
Muscular Christianity.
Where we relentlessly explore the intersection of truth and politics.
The trouble with our liberal friends is not that they're ignorant. It's just that they know so much that isn't so.
Now, here's your host, Brian Fisher.
Hi, and welcome to the second hour of Focal Point on American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Glad to have you in the conversation. Let's pick up a couple of phone calls. Let's go first to Jared in Cochran, Georgia. Then we'll go to Mac. Guys have been waiting patiently on the phone. Jared, thank you for listening. Thanks for calling, and thanks for waiting. So what is on your mind, Jared in Cochran, Georgia?
Yeah, I appreciate you taking my call, Brian. I was just curious to get your opinion on something. I guess it was right after or maybe before the election when Donald Trump had accused the FBI of wiretapping the towers or whatnot. I'm just curious how he knew that is my question. If he seemed to be very confident that was the case, and it turns out he was right. But my question is, how did he know that? And I'm just wondering if maybe he doesn't have contacts within the FBI or possibly some from a foreign source or something, but somehow he knew.
Yeah. Well, and that's a very good question. That's an excellent question. We talked about this one day, and I realized that nobody gets to listen to this program all the time, and so there are segments that everybody misses. But, Jared, I did a segment about this a couple of weeks ago where I'm trying to think of his name now. He's the head of the NSA. He's an admiral. What's his name? Not Mike Pompeo. He's the head of the NSA. See if you can find that, Jeff. I just went blank on his name. Having a tough time today with names.
Rogers?
Yeah, Admiral Mike Rogers. He's the head of the NSA. Now, Admiral Rogers, he noticed some hinky stuff going on with these FISA stuff, the FISA warrants and all that, some stuff that troubled him that he was curious about. So he had his people do an audit of all of the FISA activity was going through the NSA, and that's when he tumbled to this FISA warrant and to the fact that they were surveilling Donald Trump and his team. And so he's the one that went to Trump Tower, and he's the head of the NSA. He had every right to this information. He went to Donald Trump and said, look, you are being surveilled by the FBI. So when Donald Trump went out and said, look, my wires have been tapped in Trump Tower. In other words, I'm being surveilled. That's just kind of street talk for being surveilled. I'm being surveilled by the FBI in Trump Tower. He knew exactly that he was right because the head of the NSA knew dead to rights that's what was going on. and Mike Rogers did, and informed him that that was the case. So that's how he was so confident that he was, in fact, being surveilled in Trump Tower. And the next day, Jared, Donald Trump relocated his entire transition team from Trump Tower to the Bedminster Golf Course in New Jersey, one of his golf courses, to get out of range of all this wiretapping and the surveillance that the FBI was doing. It's a very good question, Jared. Paying attention out there. Let's go to Mac in Georgia. Mac, welcome. What's on your mind?
Hey, Brian, I'd like to see them get what's coming to them, but I think this is all smoke, although it's true. I believe that from the bottom of my heart. They are so crooked, it's pitiful, but I don't believe a thing in the world will be done about it. All we're doing is talking because they're Democrats. Republicans just, and they won't stick together. The ones that won't stay with the backing Trump, they need to drop kick them, slam out of the Republicans. I think it's, and good luck, man.
Yeah. Okay, well, I appreciate it, Mac. You know, it is interesting. You know, again, this goes back to this filibuster deal where it takes 60 votes to get anything done in the Senate, and that's because Mitch McConnell has allowed the continued existence of this fake filibuster that requires 60 votes to break, and therefore now they got to get 9 Democrat votes before they refuse to get behind Roy Moore and forfeited that seat to the Democrats. They only needed 8. They still needed 8, which is a steep hill to climb in this political environment. Now it's just virtually impossible if they got to get 9. But again, if the Republicans would stick together, that wouldn't be a problem. They could get everything done they wanted done with 51 votes as long as they would all be on the same page. Sit down with the president, figure out what's best for the country, follow the president's lead. Let's go get it done. They could get anything done that they wanted to. Now they can get virtually nothing done because it requires 9 votes. Today we had a 2-year budget that Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell could not stop talking about. They are just proud as peacocks over this 2-year budget that they've come up with. We really still do not know the details, but they got a boatload of money in there for the military. That's good, that's fine, but they got a boatload of money in there for social programs, for non-military expenditures. And we all want to see what that's all about, because that's where I think the fly is going to be in the ointment. So anyway, we'll see. And again, that's part of the problem, that the Republicans just can't stick together. It wouldn't do them any good to have just 51 votes to get something done, because they couldn't get 51 votes together. Those guys could not organize a 3-car funeral. And so how are you going to get anything done when you got to get 51 votes to line up? So that's the reality of what's going on there. Now, I want to talk about my column for a few minutes. It's up at afa.net. I'm just going to get started in this segment, and then we'll go. It'll carry over into the following segment. So it kind of touches both on immigration and touches on the religion of Islam. You know, and I have referred to Islam as the Ebola virus of culture. That it's an ideology. Once it sinks its hooks into a culture, it just bleeds it out. It drains it of life. It drains it of liberty. It drains it of freedom. It drains it of truth. Drains it of common sense. And it just bleeds a culture dry. Anytime it gets a place, it gets rooted, gets legal ground in a culture, it's going to destroy everything that it touches. And I want to give you another example about that. I think that's a pretty large claim to make, and therefore I think it's only appropriate that claim be justified and defended. And I'm talking about something that's happening right now that's just come to the surface in the United Kingdom, over in Britain. And Britain right now is seeing an alarming spike in birth defects. These are defects, a level of defects, number of defects that they haven't seen since the end of the 19th century. So we're seeing something getting resurrected here that's been dormant or basically at the same level for 120 years or longer. And now these birth defects, they're back with a vengeance in the United Kingdom, and there is a one-word explanation for the return of this spike in birth defects in Britain, and that one-word explanation is Islam. These birth defects are back and spiking in Britain because of the religion of Islam. Because in Islam, there is positive encouragement of first cousin marriages. Now, in the United States is the only country in the world that has any kind of prohibitions against first cousin marriages, and about 20 states in the Union prohibit them altogether because of the possibility of inbreeding and the birth defects that come along with that. That's what's going on in Britain. Be right back after the break to talk more about that.
Here's Twyla Brace, president of CCHF, with today's Health Freedom Minute.
Amazon, JP Morgan, and Berkshire Hathaway, with 1.1 million employees combined, say they're going to tackle healthcare costs. One expert dismissed this apparent show of force, saying it's been unsuccessfully tried before, and 1 million employees is relatively small in the scheme of things. Well, the answer is simple. Let people pay out of their own pockets for care, and they'll make decisions that control costs. This is not rocket science. Switch back to real insurance and pay cash for routine and minor care. Go to jointhewedge.com and find a doctor that accepts only cash, check, or charge. You can get this affordable healthcare ball rolling in the right direction and encourage others to join you. Go to jointhewedge.com.
Learn more about protecting your healthcare choices. Sign up for the CCHF Weekly E-News Update at cchfreedom.org. That's cchfreedom.org.
Here's some great news. If you missed the deadline to sign up for health insurance, or more importantly, if you signed up for a plan that you're just not happy with, you still have a choice. It's called Medishare. Medishare is a Christian healthcare sharing program that's been around for 25 years, and they have hundreds of thousands of members all across the country. And get this, over the years, Medishare members have shared more than $1 billion of each other's medical bills. Best of all, you could save a lot of money with Medishare. The typical savings for a family is about $500 a month. Your savings could be more or less, but think about what you could do with that extra money. Think you're stuck with a high-cost health plan that doesn't have a lot to offer? Well, think again. You can join Medishare anytime, so call them today and check it out. Here's the number to find out more, and there's no pressure. They're super easy to talk to. 855-PSALM-23. That's 855-PSALM-23. 855-PSALM-23.
This is Focal Point with Brian Fisher on American Family Radio.
Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point. Glad to have you in the conversation. No matter how you're here or listening to one of our 184 radio stations that comprise the American Family Radio Network, whether you are live streaming us on Facebook, don't forget we record it, upload it to the Facebook page, publish it right after the program. It's available on the Facebook page. 5 minutes after the program, we publish a detailed table of contents. You can find your way around the program. That's available then on the Facebook page for the rest of the week. You may be catching us audio streaming live on your computer at afr.net. You might be using the apps for the iPhone and the Android. Listen to us on the go. You might be catching us on a podcast. A lot of people listen to us. Tens of thousands of people use podcasts to stay in touch with this program. So a lot of different ways to access us. We've just gone on the YouTube channel. So that's another way that you can access the program. You can go to the Facebook page. You can find a link to the YouTube channel, and you could subscribe. Make it easy for you to get back there. Easy for you to listen to the program on the YouTube channel.
By the way, the search for, if you go to YouTube and then search for Focal Point with Brian Fisher, will now work. So
okay,
we're up and going on that.
Okay, so you can search. And we're also going to be on the Roku channel.
Yes, we'll have a guest on next week to explain a little bit.
All right, so Roku channel, another way that you can find us. So we are making it impossible for people not to find this program. Now, I was talking about this problem in Britain that's resurfaced for the first time since the late 1900s, and that is the birth defects that come from inbreeding. That's when people who are too closely related to each other start having children together. Now, they had a real problem with this, by the way, in the royal line in England. They began to realize, I'm using the word imbecile in the technical term, they began to realize that they were breeding imbeciles in the royal line. And they can't have that because they're not going to make good princes or dukes or kings. So they tried to figure out these are royalty that are breeding with each other, and they're producing people that are technically idiots, talking about their IQ level. I'm not using that pejoratively, that's the technical term. They're idiots, and they're morons. Those are technical terms for low IQ levels. And so they're trying to figure out what's going on, and they finally identified it was inbreeding. They didn't realize the hazards, didn't realize the dangers. The science of genetics was just in its infancy at the time. But they began to realize what was going on, so they stopped the practice of inbreeding, first cousins intermarrying, in Britain in the late 19th century, and the problem of these birth defects that come from that just went away, that dried up. But Islam has never gotten the picture. Islam's still locked in the Dark Ages, still locked in the medieval period when it comes to science and genetics. And so the prevalence of these birth defects is now broken surface as an issue in England. And remember, they have socialized medicine there, so the cost of providing health care for these young children with birth defects, providing some kind of educational opportunities for them, providing some kind of physical therapy for them, providing some kind of occupational opportunities for them, providing some kind of place for them to live, the cost of all of that is falling on the British taxpayers. So every taxpayer in England has got a stake in this issue. So it's the prevalence of first cousin marriages in Britain that's responsible for this, and this is in particular located among the immigrant community from Pakistan. Now, first cousin marriages are legal in Britain, but as I mentioned, by the late 1800s, they'd gone away from that because they became aware that they were associated, these intermarriages were associated with birth defects. And I mentioned, first cousin marriages are not illegal in the United States. I mean, they ought to be. They're not illegal in a good part of the United States. About half of the states they are, so you got to check your own state to find out. But it's still legal. But the United States is the only country in the world that actually bans or prohibits first cousin marriages. Now, again, it's generations of this that create the real problem. You're not going to have a problem by and large if it's just once every 5 or 6 or 10 generations or whatever. But you start making it a practice, which it is in Pakistan and a lot of Muslim cultures, that's a different problem. I was reading this column, or different problem, in the London Telegraph, one of the major newspapers in England. By the way, this article on this problem, the London Telegraph does not use the word Islam anywhere in this article. It's all about Islam. It's all about inbreeding among Muslim couples of Pakistani origin. You don't even find the word Pakistan or Pakistani until the 12th paragraph in this article. You would have no idea who they were talking about unless you read down to the 12th paragraph. Here's an excerpt from this column. Bradford coroner Mark Hinchcliffe spoke out after being told how 2-year-old Hamza Rahman died as a result of a brain disorder. An inquest heard how the child suffered from daily fits and vomiting as a result of a condition probably arising from his parents being too closely related. The boy's father, Abdul, broke down and wept as the court heard that if he had lived, he would have suffered severe learning difficulties. Through a translator, Mr. Rehman from Bradford, West Yorks, explained that he and his wife, Rosina, were first cousins. We were very anxious whether to have more children, he told the court. We have recently had another baby with the same problems again. After expressing his profound sympathy to the family, Mr. Hinchcliffe said the cause of death, quote, arose as a direct consequence of the neurological developmental disorder, end quote. So when you try to make people aware of this, you're not being mean to Muslims or anybody else. You're trying to protect them. You're trying to protect their children from these horrible neurological conditions, which is the leading cause of infant death in the Pakistani community, and that the heartache and the heartbreak for parents. So this is in their best interest. The truth shall set you free, and that's what we're seeking to do here. He said the family had lost another child through a similar disorder, and the third child born had now, quote, presented with difficulties. Recording a verdict of death by natural causes, Mr. Hinchcliffe added, quote, "On the face of it, this case highlights a cultural and religious issue." So he understands this is a matter of cultural values. It's a matter of religious values that are rooted in the religion of Islam. That's one of the reasons that makes this very, very difficult to shake, very difficult to dislodge, because it's rooted in their religion, in Islam. Marriages among cousins, very common among the first generations of the founders of Islam. And so for them, it's part and parcel of their religion. The potential risk of medical difficulty that some medical experts say can result from such unions are deeply ingrained in the culture because it's a cultural and religious issue. Now, in Britain, Pakistani parents are responsible for 3.4% of all the births in England, 3.4%, yet they account for 30% of all children who are born with recessive gene disorders, because 55% of all Pakistanis in Britain are married to their first cousins. So 3.4% of all the babies are born to Pakistanis, but they have 30% of all of the children that are born with genetic defects. Even though Pakistanis represent just 15% of Bradford's population, Bradford has the second highest number of infant deaths in the entire country of England. Pakistani parents are 13 times more likely than the general population to have children with birth disorders. Now, according to The Guardian, which is another London newspaper, intermarriage between first cousins doubles the risk that children will be born with birth defects. Now, the difficulty of purging this harmful practice is difficult because it's a religious as well as a cultural practice in the Muslim community. Now, in Norway, this is the only other society where they've done some kind of study of this. Their incidence of first cousin Pakistani unions is on the decline, but that's because they've launched a concerted campaign there in Norway to inform Norwegian Muslims of the risk. And it's finally, after years, beginning to take root. Now, there aren't any quick fixes to this problem, which means the UK will continue to labor under this burden for decades to come. And remember, Britain's got socialized medicine, so the excessive costs of providing lifetime care for patients with birth defects will fall entirely on British taxpayers. This doesn't account for the enormous social costs that are associated with providing education and employment opportunities for this demographic group. Now, in the worldwide Muslim community, first cousin marriage rates run as high routinely as 50%. So this problem is going to be common all around the Muslim world. Now, the rate of first cousin marriages in Europe is 1%. In the United States, it's 0.2%. So this problem, this issue is largely under control in Europe and in the United States, but that's no longer going to be true if we allow unrestrained Islamic immigration. In fact, Europe, I think, is about ready to get with a medical tsunami of these birth defects among children, and it's entirely avoidable with sensible immigration policies, but I'm afraid the Western world is only going to wake up until it's too late. You know, Winston Churchill said 120 years ago, when he was an officer in the British military in Middle Eastern countries, he observed the religion of Islam up close and personal, and he said, Islam is as dangerous to a culture as a rabid dog is to people. That was the analogy that he used. He said this: the influence of the religion, that is the religion of Islam, the influence of Islam paralyzes the social development of those who follow it. No stronger retrograde force exists in the world. I repeat, Winston Churchill, no stronger retrograde force exists in the world. Retrograde means it's taking culture in the wrong direction. It's taking it in reverse, and that's what's going on in British society today. It's been dragged backwards by the religion of Islam in the direction of the 19th century. So apart from a revival of a vibrant Christian faith, and apart from some severe Donald Trump-style restrictions on Muslim immigration, the United States will be next to experience this social disorder. Well, that's it for this segment. My column is up at afa.net. You ought to be able to find it right in the middle of the page. Encourage you to read it and share it with your friends. Again, this is just the truth. Nothing pejorative even about the word inbreeding. You look up the word inbreeding in the dictionary. We look for a different word for the title of the piece. Couldn't find one because inbreeding means exactly what you think it is. The intermarriage and the conception of children by people that are closely related. That's all the word inbreeding means, and that's what's happening to Britain. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
If you like trips where you have to plan everything, then maybe our tour is not for you. Hello, everyone. I'm Tim Wildman with American Family Association and American Family Radio. Of course, I'm talking about our spiritual heritage tours of Washington, D.C., Mount Vernon, and then a separate trip to Williamsburg, Virginia. And guess what? We take care of everything. All you have to do is, as they say, show up. But we take these spiritual heritage tours twice a year, once in June and once in September. Stephen McDowell of the Providence Foundation, who is a historian, will be joining us for both tours, and he will tell you everything you need to know about the places, the times, the events that we will experience on these tours of Washington, D.C. and Williamsburg. For all the information, just go to the website spiritualheritagetours.com. That's spiritualheritagetours.com for everything.
The following is not an actor, but a real-life story from Trinity Debt Management.
I had a lot of credit card debt and I couldn't pay my bills. I was feeling so bad. I got to a point where I needed some help. So I reached out and contacted Trinity.
If you're in debt and you need help, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813 to talk to a certified counselor.
They were able to take all of my different payments and put them all together.
Trinity will consolidate your accounts into one easy-to-manage monthly payment, put a stop to late fees and over-limit charges, reduce your interest, and possibly improve your credit score. You'll save thousands.
And they were actually able to work with my creditors. I've been able to pay off close to $15,000 in the last 18 months.
If your debt has you down, call Trinity at 1-800-788-1813.
My name is Stephanie, and I'm debt-free for keeps.
1-800-788-1813.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Video segments of today's program will be posted at afr.net and on the Focal Point Facebook page. You'll also find the best collection of Brian's resources on our Facebook page. If you're on Twitter, be among the very first every morning to find out what the day's show will be about. Just follow Brian at Brian J. Fisher.
Brian J. Fisher.
Hi, and welcome back to Focal Point, American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. Again, my column on Muslim inbreeding and what it's doing to British culture is up at afa.net. Encourage you to read it and share it with your friends on Facebook. Just share it with your network on Facebook. Give others an opportunity to get that kind of education. A couple of updates on the, I got an update on the Islamic front very quickly. Denmark is getting ready to ban the Islamic full-face veils. So European countries are slowly starting to wake up to this. Anita Merkel wants to do the same thing. She wants to ban the burqa in Germany. And now Denmark, the Danish government, has said, look, the burqa, the full-face veils, are incompatible with the values of Danish society. That's generally true of Islam in general, that Islam is incompatible with the values of Danish society, which is rooted in Christianity. It goes all the way back to the Reformation. They've lost a lot of respect for those values, but that Danish society grew out of the Reformation, the Protestant Reformation. Said, look, we believe in our community that people shouldn't hide their faces when they meet each other in public. This is how we show trust and respect for each other, by meeting each other face to face. So now women are going to be fined if they wear the burqa in public. Now that full face veil ban, that can have some unfortunate consequences. This is Austria now, story from Austria. They have banned the burqa in Austria. And here's a guy that got nailed by the burqa ban because he was working at an electronics shop as a pink and gray shark. So he's wearing this shark head and advertising the opening of this electronics shop as a shark. So he's wearing this shark covering his face. And the police arrested him. You can't wear that. We got a ban on full face veils. So you take it off or we're going to arrest you. He says, I'm just doing my job. I'm trying to work here. Leave me alone. He got a fine from the shark mascot.
Get that shark out of here.
Get that shark out of here. So apparently the full face veil applies to shark costumes as well as anything else. Here is an immigrant, very determined, and set a DHS record, Department of Homeland Security, the world's most persistent illegal immigrant, a Mexican that's been deported, are you ready for this? 44 times in 15 years.
Wow.
So he's had to sneak back across the border that many times. He has a one-man argument for what? It's a one-man argument for a wall. You know, one of those walls that you can't climb over, you can't get around, that you can't get through if you're on a SWAT team. Remember, they sent SWAT teams to try to get through, past, over these prototypes in the desert, and they couldn't do it. Only one guy even climbed to the top of one of them. He couldn't get down. They had to get the guy down using a cherry picker to save his life. So anyway, you know, and remember in 2015, Kate Steinle was killed by a guy that had been deported 5 times. So it's time, long past time, to make these deportations stick. Here's an illegal alien. He was relieving himself in public at a bus stop. And a guy asked him politely to stop, and the illegal alien took a box cutter to the guy and slashed him in the face and the neck. The victim ultimately got the box cutter away from him, but he suffered serious lacerations, 3 deep cuts to the neck. Now, again, McConnell and Schumer announced a bipartisan budget deal. Bipartisan meaning those 2 guys signed off on it. I have no idea what anybody else thinks. I have a sneaking suspicion that budget is going to be DOA in the House of Representatives unless you have a whole lot of Democrats that vote for this thing, and that could be the case. The House Freedom Caucus, I think, is going to have serious problems with this thing. By the way, this might disappoint some of you, disappoints me. A whole bunch of evangelicals are calling for immigration reform, basically open borders, y'all come, amnesty for everybody. Max Lucado signed this thing. Beth Moore signed this thing. This was an initiative that was started by World Relief. Now, I don't have a beef with World Relief. They've done a lot of fine work. Christian organizations, so I'm not picking on World Relief. But one of the reasons you have to be have a little bit of a question is World Relief depends on refugees for their funding. These 9 Christian organizations that deal with refugee resettlement, they get something like $2.9 billion between them from the taxpayers. No separation of church and state for liberals. When it comes to supporting amnesty, they'll give churches as much money as they want. So they're dependent, their budgets are dependent on a continuing stream of aliens coming in seeking refuge. So no wonder they're going to be for it. So they play on the compassion theme and the sympathy thing. And so they've even got Max Lucado deceived into this, got Beth Moore snagged into this deal. Now, Nancy Pelosi is saying, look, if there is not a guarantee of a vote for Dreamers in this budget, there's a whole bunch of Dems are going to be against it. Well, I know there's no guarantee of a Dreamer vote in this budget. They're not even in it anywhere. So we'll see what Nancy Pelosi and the other Democrats do. She launched kind of a filibuster of sorts today. She talked for like a couple of hours on the House floor. And in the House, there's no specific filibuster rule, but you can talk as long as you want in the House. Just takes a majority vote to shut you down, but she can talk as long as she wants.
Why? Because of her position?
Well, no, I think generally it's true in the House. Yeah, that's part of their unlimited debate deal. So could be because she's an officer. I don't know. Anyway, let's Listen to Donald Trump. This is clip number 7. Let's listen to Donald Trump talking about this budget issue, possible shutdown tomorrow night, may be averted by this budget deal, but it's still got to pass both the House and the Senate. Here's what Donald Trump said.
If we don't change the legislation, if we don't get rid of these loopholes where killers are allowed to come into our country and continue to kill gang members, and we're just talking about MS-13, there are many gang members that we don't even mention. If we don't change it, let's have a shutdown. We'll do a shutdown, and it's worth it for our country. I'd love to see a shutdown if we don't get this stuff taken care of.
All right, Donald Trump says, I'm ready to see a shutdown, and I am too. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm perfectly ready to see a government shutdown to get sensible policy on immigration, to get funding for a border wall, to get rid of the visa lottery, to get rid of chain migration, to get E-Verify in businesses. I'm perfectly content to see a shutdown, put pressure on these hoople heads in Congress to get something done on this deal. Donald Trump is. Love to know when we go to the phones here in just about 5 minutes. Love to know what you think. Would you be okay? I mean, nobody likes it, but would you be okay with a government shutdown if that's what it took to get the attention of Congress and get something meaningful done on immigration? Now, here's Ken Cuccinelli, clip number 8. And on this panel, Don Lemon is chairing this panel, and a woman by the name of Anna Navarro is the one who takes after Ken Cuccinelli in this clip. Anna Navarro is Hispanic by heritage. She also claims to be a Republican and a conservative. Now, she might have worked for Jeb Bush at some point or worked in the Bush administration or something like that, but she's a long way from being conservative. Anyway, Ken Cuccinelli, he's the last one they allow to speak. There's 4 of them. Everybody else got to talk except 10. He's bringing up the rear. He finally gets an opportunity to talk, and he's talking about MS-13 and why something vigorous and aggressive like what the Trump administration is doing, why that needs to be done with MS-13. And then you'll hear Anna Navarro come in and try to cut off his water.
MS-13 is the most violent gang in the country, and that's certainly true in Virginia. The Washington metropolitan area has around 3,000 MS-13 members, almost a third of their entire national contingent. We don't have any of the hate groups Van just described, all of which should be concerning, that have anything like those numbers in the Washington metro area. There's nobody killing people as viciously and as frequently in this area where I live and in the Washington metro area like MS-13. That's true in other communities around the country. And look, we've defamed General Kelly here in this segment. He started off by saying some people might have been afraid to sign up for DACA. Other people might have been lazy. And both of those are true. Anna said, gosh, they were too busy, they're working. It's a work program. If they were working, it was illegal. You know, we haven't gotten to the heart of this problem at all. The president is willing to have a showdown with the Democrats again. That's where the shutdown comment came from, because he knows how it's going to end. And my last comment is that since the last shutdown, only one side has given any ground on this, and that is President Trump has gone from the 690,000 actual DACA number to a hypothetical number of 1.8 million that we aren't even sure of.
The people who care are immigrants who are
going to get amnesty.
No, I'll tell you who cares. Let me tell you who cares, Ken. Let me explain to you who cares.
Quick,
Can I answer your question about who cares? The people who care are the immigrants who are sick and tired of having this White House attack us and on a daily basis.
I'm sick and tired of listening to your shrill voice in my ears.
The people who are maligned.
So Anna Navarro, you probably couldn't hear that because she was talking so loudly. She says, I'm sick and tired of listening to you. And Ken Cuccinelli says, I'm sick and tired of listening to your shrill voice in my ear. So the conversation didn't get any more civil after that, I can virtually guarantee you. Now let's go to clip number 6. We'll finish the segment with this. This is Lanny Davis talking about Jim Comey. Now remember, Lanny Davis, card-carrying Democrat, worked in the Clinton administration. Here's what he has to say about James Comey.
Do you think Comey is a partisan one way or the other? What do you make about him?
No, I think he's a narcissist.
Well, wait a minute, you're not a psychiatrist. How do you be a narcissist?
Because by his own words, and I don't use labels, but narcissism
is a label.
Well, no, it is a label, but I'm about to define the facts that support the label. James Comey said, as you just had a quote from him, and Rod Rosenstein had it right, I get to decide when I'm going to publicize something that nobody allows me to in the Justice Department. James Comey decided to go to Congress 11 days from the election, which is contrary to 50 years of Justice Department policy. Why? Because I, James Comey, get to decide.
But I thought he committed to it publicly.
You know, narcissism, I mean, it sounds like an occupational hazard of being a Democrat or being a liberal. So, you know, and the narcissism, I mean, you know, Democrats have no trouble hanging that title on Donald Trump, and I frankly think they might even be right about that. But they got no problem psychoanalyzing Donald Trump. If you try to do the same thing to James Comey, well, that's a different deal. We'll be back with your phone calls, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840.
This is Tim Armstrong from the Worthy Walk radio program. I encourage you to listen as we work verse by verse through the scriptures each Sunday at 9:30 a.m. Central Time here on American Family Radio. Join me as we explore the Word of God and learn to apply its truths to our lives each day. The Worthy Walk radio program, Sundays at 9:30 a.m. Central Time on American Family Radio.
Jeremiah 20 verse 9 says, "His word was in my heart like a burning fire." Hi, this is Alex McFarland, co-host of Exploring the Word. You know, I was in my second year of college as a new believer when God put in my heart an insatiable desire to read His Word. And that daily reading of God's Word has shaped who I am. And every day on Exploring the Word, Bert Harper and I teach the Word so that fire and love for Scripture will be in your heart as well.
Exploring the Word, weekday afternoons at 3 Central on American Family Radio.
Hi, this is Kirk Cameron, and I am honored to be partnering with the Ministry of Preborn and American Family Radio to help moms choose life.
Actor Kirk Cameron supports Preborn.
My 4 oldest children were adopted. That is because of caring and compassionate people who help those young mothers choose life. My wife is an adopted child, and her birth mother chose life for her. If it weren't for those caring individuals that help those young moms value the sacredness of life, I wouldn't have my wife, I wouldn't have my 4 adopted children, and the 2 natural-born children that we have wouldn't exist either. My whole family is here because of people that are involved with ministries like Preborn.
Underwrite a free ultrasound and help save a baby's life. Go to preborn.com. That's preborn.com. Or dial pound 250 and say keyword baby. All gifts are tax deductible. Your love can save a life.
American Family Radio. You're listening to Focal Point with Brian Fisher. Focal Point. Brian Fisher.
Hi, welcome back to Focal Point, American Family Radio. Brian Fisher is my name. We'll go to the phones, 888-589-8840. I'm particularly interested in whether you would support a government shutdown if that was the only way to get funding for a border wall. Donald Trump says, I'm willing to do it. Are you willing to do it? I'm willing to do it. Like to see if you are. Now, this current budget doesn't say anything about immigration, doesn't say anything about dreamers, so that would be a debate for another day. But remember, March 5, the DACA program shuts down. I mean, it terminates March 5. So if you're going to do anything for the DACA recipients, they're not exactly the same as dreamers, but everybody uses those terms interchangeably. Then the deadline to do it would be by March 5. So this is going to come up again. Number is 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. You know, and don't forget, we were told by professional psychiatrists, I think it was the American Psychiatric Association, they told us, look, it's not appropriate to psychoanalyze people in public office. If you haven't interviewed them, you haven't talked to them directly, it's inappropriate and unprofessional to try to psychoanalyze them. Then you had some other counselors saying, no, it's absolutely okay. It wasn't okay to do that with Barack Obama, but it definitely is okay to do that with Donald Trump. And I want to play this one soundbite. This is Mika Brzezinski talking to Michael Wolff. He's the guy that wrote that completely unverified book about Donald Trump, just repeating one rumor after another, no facts in it that can be verified whatsoever. And he's on with Mika Brzezinski, who can't stand Donald Trump. She spent a good part of their show, she and Joe Scarborough, program is Morning Joe, just trying to lampoon Donald Trump and run him out of office. Now, this Michael Wolff goes on her program, and even Mika Brzezinski finally had it with this guy. And my question, if Mika Brzezinski doesn't think this guy has any credibility, why should we give him any credibility? Clip 10. 9.
You made some news this weekend talking about things you didn't know firsthand, saying you believed it was true, but you had no proof that the president had an affair with someone in his administration.
Yes.
It's pretty much what you said. Then you kind of led and indicated if you follow the breadcrumbs, you can figure out who it was. After a lot of rumors came out, you know, it was speculation that you meant Nikki Haley, and you said she's embraced it. Don't you find that absolutely irresponsible at this point in time where we are, when you're talking about a woman who's a high-profile woman in the Trump administration,
let me
to go after her without any evidence, without any facts? It just seems that it is so irresponsible.
Well, first thing, I didn't go after her, and secondly, certainly what I meant was I found it puzzling that she would deny something she was not accused of.
I'm going to go as far as to say that you might be having a fun time playing a little game, dancing around this, but you're slurring a woman. It's disgraceful.
It's, Mika, again, she has been accused of nothing. She has decided to deny what she has not been accused of.
Right.
Certainly, I didn't accuse her of this.
Mm-hmm.
But wait, are you suggesting
that?
Are you suggesting the language is not ambiguous in any way in the things that you've said and the way you've stated it?
Are you kidding? You're on the set of Morning Joe. We don't here.
Read me the language.
Are you kidding me? I'm not reading you anything.
Play the Bill Maher.
If you don't get it, and you don't get what we're talking about, I'm sorry. This is awkward. You're here on the set with us, but we're done. Michael Wolff, thank you. We're going to go to break now.
Bye, everyone. We'll be right back. So, again, kicked him right off the set, terminated the interview. I don't think we'll be seeing Michael Wolff on Morning Joe again. So, again, if they got so disgusted with him and his lack of credibility, his lack of honesty, his lack of ethics, why should anybody else pay any attention to them? All right, let's go to the phones, 888-589-8840, 888-589-8840. Let's begin with Jackie in Ocean Springs. Jackie, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Well, just in referencing the government shutdown, if they can't get on board with compromise, I believe we should let them shut it down, and I believe that we should withhold the pay of the responsible party for shutting it down, and maybe also term limits.
Well, you know, it's not a bad
on the radio.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea, Jackie. Somebody else came up with an idea, which I like. Never happened, but the idea would be if they can't get their act together and the government shuts down, let's just have a default backup that we all agree on. It automatically goes into effect if they can't agree and the government winds up shutting down. Agree that the government will shut down. No, agree that the government will stay open. It will be funded like a continuing resolution at whatever the government was funded at before. With this difference, there will be a 1% reduction in expenditures in the federal budget every month. So every month you can't make something happen, it's a 1% reduction in the budget. 2% if you go 2 months. You know, the reality is, we've talked about this before, but if you cut the federal budget by 1% a year, just 1% a year across the board, you do that for 7 years, you will have a balanced budget. Maybe it's a decade, but somewhere within a decade, you will have a balanced budget. It's not that hard to do. It can be done. All right, Jackie, good idea. You know, cut off their pay or reduce their pay until they get their act together, until they start earning their paychecks. All right, Nancy, Houston, Texas. What's on your mind, Nancy?
Hi, Brian. Just a quick comment, actually an observation. The story about the children with the birth defects through the Muslims in England, it's quite evident from our law that we have banned that because of that very thing.
Yes.
So our history shows and proves that that's the case. And so what I'm thinking is all of these people that are coming to our country, they may be mentally disturbed because they have been created by inbreeding. So, you know, that could be a part of the reason why they're so crazy. And that's I don't mean that to sound bad, but then the other thing is, I think if we're going to shut the government down, it should be done. That wall needs to be built, and they are one of the reasons we need to do that. This lady that was, this person that was killed by someone who had been deported 44 times, that's ridiculous. That's absurd. Someone should have to answer for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Nancy, I appreciate what you're saying there. And again, you know, one of the ways the birth defects can affect the intelligence and the way the mind operates for someone who's affected by that. There's no question it can have an effect on intelligence, effect on ability to learn information, effect on ability to master a new language, to do well in school. All of those could be affected by birth defects. So there can be a real toll it takes on the children, and then anybody that may have to interact with them in some way. It's going to be a drain on everybody.
Yes. Brian, just an update. Nancy Pelosi has been speaking on the floor for 5 hours now. And so people are posting pictures of people falling asleep behind her.
Oh, man. I cannot imagine listening to that woman for 5 hours. I mean, I don't have anything personal against Nancy Pelosi, but whoa, that would take a serious commitment. All right, let's go to Nancy in Mobile, Alabama. Nancy, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate what you do, but I want to go along with you about shutting down the government. If Mr. Trump's shutting it down, then we need to shut it down. We've got too many illegal aliens who are committing too many crimes. They're coming back in the country. If they want to come, they need to come, get their citizenship just like everybody else.
Yeah. Well, very good, Nancy. You know, and there is a way for anybody to become a citizen. There's a way for any illegal alien to become a citizen. Go home and get in line. Anybody can do that. That's how everybody else in the world has to do it. Why should we cut a break for people that have already broken our laws? So again, that's an avenue that's open to any illegal alien. Go home and get in line. All right, Nancy, good call. Let's go to Jim in Kelowna, Illinois. Jim, welcome. What's on your mind?
Hi, Brian.
Hey.
I would love to see the shutdown because I really think that's the last thing that the Dems and the liberals want to happen. They've played this Trump card so many times, no pun intended, they've played this card so many times, and so many Republicans were fearful of what the press was saying. Well, Donald Trump, President Trump, I don't think he really cares. And the last thing they want to do is have President Trump expose the government shutdown for what it is. It's not going to, I don't think the majority of the public are even going to realize that it's shut down. And once that happens, they're going to have a very tough time throwing that in everybody's face from here forward for many years to come.
That's a good observation, Jim. And I talked about that the last time they did a shutdown. Nobody's even going to notice it. It's going to lose its ability to motivate people when people realize how little there is to it. Only 17% of the government only 17% of the government shuts down. 83% of it, all the parts that you actually see, just keep rolling right along. The post office, the military just keep rolling right along. People that go without their pay, and there are people that go without pay for the duration of the shutdown, they've always historically gotten their money back. It becomes a paid vacation for them. All right, let's go to Jim in Houston, Texas. By the way, they're poking fun at Nancy Pelosi. Remember what they did to Ted Cruz when he filibustered, and he was filibustering the Obamacare, that monstrosity, and they just blistered him. So Nancy Pelosi really has very little to complain about if they have some fun at her expense. Let's go to Jim in Houston. Welcome, Jim. What's on your mind?
Hey, Brian, how long would it take for them to balance the budget if they were not allowed to draw a salary unless they balanced the budget?
Yeah, that's a good point. It would happen pretty quickly. You know, that's similar to what our last caller said about, cutting their pay. What Jackie said, cut their pay, and they'd get their minds right in a big hurry. Okay, good call, Jim. Appreciate it. Thank you. Let's go to Margie, last call of the day, Plano, Texas. Margie, welcome. What's on your mind? Talk to me. I got about 20 seconds. Hit me with your best shot.
Okay, I am in support of the government shutdown in case the wall is not funded. We absolutely need that safety. And I tied that to the football player, the Colts, who was killed on Sunday morning.
Yes.
That was by an illegal immigrant that was 37 years old. And 37 is the kind of like the oldest age of any dreamer.
Yeah, so So what you're saying is these dreamers are not the innocent little children we think they are. Okay, great call. Thank you, Margie. Be back tomorrow.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast do not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
The AFA Cultural Institute, a video library of resources dealing with the discussions of our day.
Marriage and family, finances, evangelizing Muslims. The AFA Cultural Institute takes all of these topics and puts them in the hands of people to be able to equip them.
Start your library of the AFA Cultural Institute at AFA Store.